Hello, friends. Welcome to the 9th episode of a year-long conversation. Today we're going to be talking all about, is there a divide in the progressive movement between race, sex, age, all those things, and are we setting ourselves up to get divided further and further as this race keeps going?
I've been looking for freedom. I've been looking so long. I've been looking for freedom. Still the search goes on.
Joining me as always is Blue and Alabama's Michael. Michael, how's it going?
Going great. Can't wait till we hit double digits on these things.
I know. I'm surprised we haven't been canceled yet. Listen, we might make it.
I think so. We haven't got an official word from iTunes yet.
Not too long ago, we officially were featured on iTunes. This is for the politics, not the main top 10 thing.
Yeah.
But for the new political podcast, we were featured. Yeah, just go down a little bit, but we were on there. And that's what counts. And each bit more popular, and we support our fans. Yeah, so we like our fans. We want them to keep listening. And, I mean, my God, 10 episodes in, we're about to hit double digits. What should we do? Throw a party, maybe?
I think so. I think a party sounds perfect. And I know just a guy who could probably throw a really good party. Trump. Donald J.
Well, he actually is pretty good at that, at events and catering. He's in the hospitality business.
Exactly.
He originally made his fortune throwing black people out of their houses in Brooklyn. Trying to gentrify their neighborhoods. When they did a Comedy Central Club roast of him a few years ago, he was like in between Charlie Sheen and Pam Anderson. And I'm like, this will be the first POTUS that's ever had a fucking Comedy Central Club roast. He's the first president who's had a lot of things. But yeah, they had a roast of him, and Snoop Dogg came out and he goes, Trump says he wants to throw Obama and his family out of the White House. Well, it wouldn't be the first time he kicked a black family out of their home, which is exactly how he made his money in Brooklyn.
Yeah.
But he got into casinos and hotels and hospitality. The man should never step foot in the White House except to throw a party or cater an event. He's good at that. I mean, I would totally let him cater our party and throw an Alabama liberal and Blue and Alabama podcast party. We've already had so much celebration. Anton Scalia died. I think a spontaneous parade burst out in Los Angeles and New York. I think behind me there was a parade. We've already had too much good fortune in the last 2 weeks.
All I'm saying is that would not top our parade. It would be monumental.
We might even get Obama to show up. He was on Ellen a few weeks ago. I mean, why not? But,
I mean, he's been everywhere else.
He's been camping with Bear
Except
Grylls
for real
in Alaska. He's been, except for real time. He's been in cars with Jerry Seinfeld. He's been in Mark Maron's garage. I mean, he got the lady with the green lips on YouTube. She interviewed him on the YouTube channel. So, hell, I mean, come on by. But anyway, we had a good podcast posted a couple of days ago. We're doing 2 this week because so much happened in the last week. It bumped what we wanted to talk about and get more in depth into that. But right now, we have more primaries. The Republicans are going to South Carolina, and they're going to vote, and the Democrats are going to Nevada, and then at the end of the month they swap. Republicans go to Nevada and Democrats go to South Carolina. So Iowa and New Hampshire, those were exact same for both parties, but some people may not know that from here on out the schedules are not exactly the same. Republicans may vote in a state on one day and Democrats a few weeks later, or vice versa. A lot of states still do vote the same way, but from here on out there won't be exactly the same primaries for both.
Yeah. That's because most states can't handle that much bullcrap in their state from that many politicians.
Yeah, somebody, when Iowa was happening, somebody said Iowa needs to fence them all off, keep them there. And then, Iowa's kind of like the weird aunt of states. And they'll be like, oh, we swear we're going to come back next year. We swear. And then they don't. They're there for another 4 years. When Trump was leaving, he said, I love Iowa. I think I might buy a farm here. And I thought, Trump, you'd be a terrible president, but a reality show where you and your family have like a Green Acres type farm and try to raise it in Iowa, I think the simple life meets the president. And I mean, a lot of these candidates, when this race is over with, we might actually miss seeing them on television because Lord knows the debates in town halls, they basically just turned into the best reality show that you ever watched. So, I mean, like Trump and Bernie Sanders, that'd be a horrible general election, but it'd be a great sitcom, like an Odd Couple type sitcom. Bernie's like, you gold plated the couch again. Donald, Bernie, you got no class. I mean, I could see them as like some Austrian Felix type duo.
I saw a tweet that said, I believe this is actually really the last season of America, and the writers are just really screwing with this now.
America's jumped the shark. During the GOP debate, they'll say something like, I thought this was the most hilarious episode of Saturday Night Live until I realized it was the GOP debate. Speaking of the Republican debate, Trump, he had I wouldn't call it a meltdown, but I mean, literally, everything Jeb Bush was like, Donald Trump was like, you're a fucking liar. I'll take you outside. He was ready to fall. I mean, he looked like he was ready to punch somebody. And I'm just wondering, is that going to actually maybe help him in South Carolina? Will that lead to him getting more votes? Yeah, if he like put on fast knuckles and he's like, all right, motherfuckers. I thought we finished this debate out. alleyway like he did. Like he wins by 100 points in Alabama or something. And like he gets 98% of the vote. They kept saying it was over for him because he lost his temper and he was yelling and he looked furious and he acted petty and all this. And I'm like, you people clearly don't know what this primary season has been about.
Why he's so popular.
Yeah. I mean, people know that he's like this. I mean, what do you think they're voting for? They want him to be like this, but they want him to go kamikaze on China or something. In their minds, they're like, Trump is such a bully. I mean, like, he'll file a frivolous lawsuit on Vladimir Putin. He'll sue him for something, and he'll just bully people. And that's what they want. And I don't think the media, and we'll get into this, because this is all about the liberal base and how, in some ways, there is a liberal bubble. I think there's a huge conservative bubble, and they don't let facts get in. Climate crisis isn't real. This thing with the Supreme Court, Ted Cruz keeps saying the people should have a vote in this. Well, first of all, that's exactly what the Constitution doesn't say. You would think a constitutional originalist would know that. That's exactly not what the law is. The Supreme Court's never been up for a vote. It's like, oh, it's only the most important court in the land. It's too important to leave to the law. We need to let people vote on this. And that's number one. But number two, they did vote on this. It's called Barack Obama's second term. I mean, this is what we elected the president to do, was nominate Supreme Court justices. For Ted Cruz, he's like, I don't think America wants a president who's going to get rid of the ban on partial birth abortions or whatever. I'm like, yeah, what you think and how they voted is not the same thing, asshole. Like, what you think America wants, like, you don't speak for them. They speak. They vote. And I just found it crazy that because we have to hear what Ted Cruz thinks people want, we don't actually pay attention to what they really want, which is the president to do his job. Do you agree that this is madness?
Absolutely. It's unbelievable to really think about how you could have somebody like Ted Cruz and Donald Trump, Marco Rubio, these guys, well, forget Trump, but these guys that are politicians who they swear an oath to uphold the Constitution, and then they're basically saying, forget the Constitution, we're not going to follow it when it comes to this. Basically what they're saying.
Especially Ted Cruz, because this guy's supposed to be Mr. Constitution. Somebody's got to take that label away from him, because this is a guy who wipes his ass with the Constitution as a matter of course. He's pro-torture, pro-get rid of habeas corpus. The man should not really even be running for president because of his birth. And it's like, this is a guy who talks about being a constitutional originalist, and there's several things about him, such as even running for president, that he wouldn't meet that standard of. And for him to say, well, me as a Canadian foreign national, I'm going to speak for America now and say that they want to vote on this. So if we're a Democrat doing the same thing, you'd be flying to filibuster them. You'd be running to complain. I mean, you'd throw yourself on the Senate floor and talk about the death of America, and Uncle Sam got shot in the heart.
If the roles were reversed, you better believe Republicans, they would already have a nominee out.
They were interviewing Lindsey Graham, and if there's been a more useless man on this planet, I don't know him, but they were interviewing Lindsey Graham, and they were asking him, they said, Lindsey, you voted for Atlantic Hagan and Sotomayor, like you voted for Obama's pick, so are you going to support him and his right? He goes, well, no, this time's different. How is it different? I mean, he was trying everyone in the world not to say because it's an election year. The way he goes, because they passed rules about consensus and blah, 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 and they said, that doesn't make any sense. Like, why would you not support that? Well, because they changed the rules, and he kept saying that, and then they asked him, they said, so there's not a nominee you would support? He goes, the president should wait. And they said, but if he nominated somebody, you're saying you would not support anybody. And he said, well, if he did, it would have to be somebody with broad consensus. They said, who's somebody with broad consensus? And he said, Orrin Hatch.
What?
I mean, this is a Republican senator, and he's saying, well, if he nominated a Republican senator, I'd vote for him. And it's like, Lindsey, like nominating your friends. When you listen to John McCain, Lindsey'd be a good running mate. Like, it's like Lindsey, Orrin, and John McCain go out and get ice cream every day or something. If Lindsey's saying, if you nominated my best friend, I'd vote for him.
Why would he nominate a guy that's about to die himself? He's like 80 years old.
Well, they would like that, because then when a Republican takes the White House, he'd quit. Well, that's number one, is like you're saying, the age thing. Number two, it's personal friends with Lindsey Graham. Number three, I like how their idea of a compromise pick is a Republican senator. The subtitle of that, well, what do we even need two parties for, is basically what he's saying. I mean, if Obama is just going to nominate the same person the Republican would nominate, do they understand how crazy that is? They could have come up with some guy, like they're talking about, some of the justices in the appellate court are very conservative, and they're talking about them or whatever, but he didn't even come up with a judge or a justice. He just, like the Republican off the top of his head, a politician. The Republicans, their best bet would have been to start talking about a judge who had just joined the courts and didn't have a lot of major decisions under his belt. He's kind of a blank slate, and nobody really knows what he's going to do. And that might be like the most moderate that you could get, because there's some that they're advocating now that are kind of new judges. They seem kind of conservative to me. I kind of hope Obama doesn't go that route, but I saw saw a few names on his short list, and they were on that list. But now, even that's not a compromise. Like, basically, it's, well, you got to nominate a senator on the Republican side, or, you know, you're basically playing politics. And it's like, how is that not playing politics? Right. Nominate a Republican politician, you're too partisan.
Yeah.
If Obama's just going to nominate the same person a Republican would, then really what do we need two parties for? Because you know how the media is. They'll take his suggestion, and then when Obama picks an actual judge and somebody who's a liberal, well, Obama's playing partisanship again. They start with something so crazy a Democrat would never do it, and then when they don't do it, well, he had a chance. There's no two sides to this, and they can't go back and forth and be like, well, Obama and Republicans, they're at it again. They're at it again because they won't do their job. I mean, Obama's
right.
100% right. There's no way around this. They've always done that. They've said, well, the divisions between Obama and the Congress, as if Obama started them. Like, he showed up in Paul Ryan's office and punched him and walked out or something. Yeah. Divisions are there without him. But you said something interesting about, at the last Republican debate, you saw something you'd never thought you'd see.
Ted Cruz attacked Marco Rubio about a speech that he was giving on Univision. Then Rubio comes back and is like, well, I don't know how you even know what I said because you don't even speak Spanish. And then Ted Cruz on a Republican debate stage starts speaking Spanish. Spanish-speaking candidate on the Republican Party running for president.
So far, the only person who speaks Spanish has been Jeb. He gave a speech in Spanish, and Trump still won't let him live it down. Trump brings it up. I mean, when they were speaking Spanish between Trump, I suppose Trump didn't look from side to side being like, what the hell is going on? I'm taking over the stage. I want my stage back. What if Trump's eyes just got big with fear, and he's like, oh, my God, I knew it.
He's going to build a wall on the debate stage.
Put a wall around his podium, and he has to put up like bullhorn or something to answer the question because I'm not coming out till the foreigners are gone. I'm really shocked Trump didn't say something like, hey, what is this, the Telemundo debate or something? I mean, like, I'm just so shocked that he didn't come up with some zinger. Trump should have been like, this is why you should vote for me. I don't speak any foreign languages. I don't speak Spanish. I don't speak anything. You know, when you call my campaign, you don't have to press one for English. It's only English. I mean, but I think at that point, Trump wasn't even listening to what they were saying. He was so focused on, I hate Jeb Bush. I mean, he probably sitting there on the podium in carbs, I hate Jeb, into the podium. You know? I don't even think he heard what they were talking about. Trump, he's going to get a bunch of his fans and go outside Jeb Bush's house and be like, give us Columba Bush. We want to deport her right now. Deport Jeb's wife. If Jeb beats it for the nomination, he's going to file a lawsuit that Jeb's wife's an illegal or something. I mean, a lot of this shit is politics, like Ted Cruz. I don't know if Ted has real enemies because Ted has no real friends. Like, Ted's scale of human interaction is so Martian. Like, it's just so, like, alien. Like, Ted doesn't have hatred because he doesn't have love, so it's kind of like, Donald Trump's my best friend, and here's why he's a piece of shit. I don't even know if he really has human emotions. I genuinely feel like Trump hates Jeb Bush. Like, I think that they really don't. Like, I think Trump and a lot of these guys, it's like Cruz and Carson, they could probably sit and eat a steak and have a cigar. I really think he hates Jeb Bush, and Jeb, I really think hates him.
They do. They absolutely hate each other. I posted on Facebook. But for the next debate, they might as well just bring boxing gloves out. Donald and Jeb finally just get in the ring, go at it. Yeah. Luther's out of the race.
With this last debate, it was crazy. It felt like a boxing match because the crowd that went there, they were at a UFC fight. They were booing, they were hollering. I'm sure during the commercial they threw shit. I mean, it was like, they were crazy. I kept wondering if a bouncer could take the whole audience out back. Who thought this debate up? They're in South Carolina on a Saturday night. Probably half that audience is in the bag, and there's a blood red background behind them. Red's like proven to increase aggression.
Yeah.
I mean, at one point, Trump looked like a chameleon. His face was so red from screaming, he blended into the background. You couldn't even see him. They were all screaming at each other. Even John Kasich, who's fake Mr. Nice Guy, like, hey, I'm John Kasich. I'm not into all this negative. When Jeb said something, you're a damn liar, Jeb. Shut up. I thought, wow, it's amazing how fast Mr. Nice Guy goes out the window.
Let's not say that everybody was yelling. There was that one guy down at the end. He was just frustrated because he couldn't get his nap in from all the yelling.
Well, wouldn't be said, but my campaign supporters, they keep telling me they want me to yell and scream, but is that what America wants? I don't think so. And they were total crickets, and I thought, that's what they want. You hear them, they say nothing. At this point, I think Ben Carson yelling would almost be like a fun medical experiment. Like, can he even biologically do it? Is he even capable? You're right, he wasn't yelling. I think that he's not capable. I think the podium could be on fire. He'd be like, help. You know what, this is really unfair, guys. You guys didn't call on me when my podium was on fire. I mean, he'd just be sitting there bitching about it. It was a real brawl. And at one point when they came back from a commercial break, what if you just saw Trump wiping the blood off his gloves? It was just any little thing somebody said. Marco Rubio's like, I think Trump's microphone bill. You're a goddamn liar, Rubio. Shut your mouth. You think he'll still win South Carolina? That this will have any real effect?
I don't know, because, I mean, he's been ahead for so long in the polls. Like, it's hard to see one bad debate performance just killing all of his momentum. We kind of seen it some with Marco with that debate before last, but the difference is nobody expected Marco to win. They expected him to compete, but not win. Like, he didn't have a 20-point lead, what Trump had.
Kind of the difference between Marco and Trump's support is that Trump's is populist and Marco's isn't.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
the party really wants Marco, so the party's saying Rubio, 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 and the people are saying Trump, Trump, Trump.
Yeah.
So I think when Marco had a horrible debate, it just gave people who didn't really like him that much an excuse not to vote for him. New Hampshire's 95% white. Most of the Republican voters, they were responding to Trump's anti-immigration message. Even though, as I've said, there's 50 Hispanics who live in New Hampshire. It's like, if you want to get rid of the Gonzalez family, just tell them. They wanted a reason to not vote for Rubio because he was Cuban, obviously, and he had the amnesty bill. And every debate brawl between Jeb, Marco, and Ted about who used to support amnesty and who hates it the most now.
That's true.
You're going to find these guys handcuffed to a dead hooker before you will immigration reform.
This is exactly why it's been debated for 30 years and nothing solved.
The only way to get it done is when there's no elections going on, but because America is constantly having elections. I mean, this is radical, but we need to get rid of the midterms. I mean, we just need to have 4 years, mayor, governor, Senate, Congress, president, everything, 4 years, up and down. Nothing gets done because there's elections all the time. Everybody's afraid to vote for anything that might be remotely unpopular in their district. And also with Trump, I mean, what he was getting booed about, as I've said the last podcast, was what he's the most right about, which is George Bush is a complete idiot. He lied to us about Iraq. He got us in Iraq. He's a terrible president. The crowd was booing him, and they said, oh, that'll hurt Trump in South Carolina. George Bush is popular there. I don't think he is. They keep saying, well, South Carolina's got a big military culture. I haven't met somebody in the military who likes George W. Bush. We're from Alabama. A quarter of our high school class joined the military. A large majority of those people are Republicans. I mean, I'd say almost all of them are Republicans. Even among them, even among Republicans in the military, I didn't meet anybody who liked George W. Bush. And I don't think many of them are supporting Jeb. I think they're probably going for anybody else.
And I was watching an interview with Jeb Bush, and he was talking about how George was going to be coming and helping him on the road campaigning. And he was like, yeah, my brother's a really popular Republican. And I'm like, do you have another brother?
Well, we know it's not George, and we know it's not Neil Bush, who almost fucked up the entire economy with that savings and loan scandal. People forget, like, Neil Bush, ever since the savings and loan scandal, he's like disappeared off the face of the earth. Like, you can find Walmart where you find Neil Bush. So yeah, I don't know who he's referring to. The most popular member of his family is Barbara Bush, which is why he's dragging her poor ass everywhere he goes. But yeah, I don't know. They keep saying Trump's attacks on W. That's going to hurt him and cost him the nomination. Well, but the people we're hearing that from are Lindsey Graham and people inside the Republican Party. I don't know that, like, the average Republican voter doesn't agree with Trump.
Trump had that good line. Jeb said something in a debate about how great his mother was and how strong his mother was. Donald was like, well, she should be running.
Jeb was like, Donald, leave my family out of this. I don't talk about his family. And I'm like, his family wasn't the president of the United States. And I mean, like, it's like your dad and your brother are president. If you left your family out of this, you wouldn't even be in the race. Like, if Jeb Bush was a bus driver, nobody'd be like, I like what that guy's got to say. I mean, he's only in the damn race because it's keep saying, my brother's not running, I am. And I'm like, well, you say that, but you look at a list of your national security advisors, and they're the exact same as W had. He's just hiring all the old Bush people. It's madness. The Republican base is totally fractured, and that's why there's a five-way fight for their nomination. Over on the liberal side, I'm beginning to sense a growing divide among progressives, because Bernie Sanders, I used to really like this guy. When we first talked about him in episode 4, like, I hesitated to even talk about him, because he's somebody that I'm like, well, I'm Hillary, and she's going to win, and I want her to win, and she's my candidate. I didn't want to talk bad about him. He's not a real Democrat, but he's a real liberal, and he stands for a lot of great things, and I mean, I like his rhetoric and all that.
And he's a really positive person to have in the Senate for the liberals.
Well, I don't know, and we're about to get into that, because the longer this race goes on, the less I really have any respect for him. His whole thing, because they say, how are you going to get this through Congress? His rhetoric is, I'm going to be so popular among Democrats, liberals, and moderates, it's going to help vote in a wave of Democrats. You're going to see a wave of congressional support follow me into the White House. That was what he said. That was a couple weeks ago. This last week, we've seen him, the Democrat Party's evil. Like, he went from 2 weeks ago saying, I'm going to help vote in a wave of Democrats, I'll be the most popular Democrat since FDR, to being basically like, I'm not a real Democrat, and the real Democrats belong to the machine, and the Democratic Party is bad. The weekend that Anton Scalia died, I mean, he didn't come out the way Hillary came out, and Hillary Hillary said, we got to support Obama. Obama's got to nominate this person. He said Obama should nominate, but it was in such a half-hearted way. It wasn't a focus for him. And I feel like in the back of his mind, he thinks, well, when I'm president, I'd like to nominate. And it goes back to that second-guessing thing of, like, I can do it better than Obama can. And it goes back to that whole Obama's really a sellout thing, and Obama's really not supporting real progressive values thing. That Saturday, he had an event in Las Vegas, it looked like a high school, where he basically told them that the Democratic Party is conspiring against him. He's trying to lead an uprising against the Democratic Party machine. A week ago, you were on a debate stage talking about how you were going to be great for Democrats because you'd help get them elected. And now, the way you're talking about is like you're almost encouraging your fans not to vote for a Democratic ticket, to just come vote for you and then go home because you're the lone savior of progressive politics, and all the Democrats in their own party, they're too corrupted to be trusted in the Congress with you. Right. And I think this is Bernie's problem. It's always been his problem, is that, as we've said, he's not a Democrat. He joined the party in 2015. He's been an independent socialist. He only joined to run for president. Right. And a lot of people who knew him in Congress, they said, well, I'm really shocked because Bernie, for 30 years, has been saying, you guys are all wrong. What you want to do is not going to work. You're too corporate. You're not going to get anything done. Anthony Weiner, Barney Frank, everybody who worked with him said that they're really surprised that he's now trying to be Mr. Democrat because his whole thing was that the Democratic Party is hopelessly corrupted and they'll never be able to do it the way that they're doing it because they kept saying, you should join us. You caucus with us. You're a liberal. Join the Democrat Party. Like, why don't you join us and be a part of these committees? And he would never join the party. Now, I think we're kind of seeing that come out of him a little bit where he's been for 30 years saying Democrats are sellout, party machine is bad, they're just as bad as Republicans. But now, if he's saying that now, it doesn't do him any good, and it sure as hell doesn't help Hillary, and it doesn't help any congressional Democrats. It feels like the wrong message to be putting out there at a time when Obama and Hillary and the battle over the Supreme Court, all these things, they're going in the Democrats' favor. We're about to see a really literal example of Republican obstruction where they try to block Obama's Supreme Court nominee. This could be our moment. Right now, we could be raising money, rallying around all this, and they are doing that. The party's able to do all that, but not when you've got a major presidential candidate right to the side of that saying, oh, all this over here you're giving money to, this is the corrupt part of politics. Give it to me instead.
You nailed it. And that's the thing. It's like we need right now to be more united than ever when you have one of your two presidential candidates basically saying everything going on with the party is bad. And I go back to what you said in the last podcast where you were talking about nobody has asked Bernie if he would ever consider running independent if he doesn't win the nomination. And I think the more this stuff goes on, the higher the chances of that happening.
He said he wouldn't last year, but what I'm thinking he's doing is he's setting the foundation and the seed. When he loses the nomination, he can say, well, I would not have run as an independent, but they stole it from me.
But, yeah,
then
exactly.
Jump in there, and his fans will go along with that. And, of course, he knows a third-party candidate can't win, or he would have run as a third-party candidate.
Yeah.
I mean, he knows that somebody like Ralph Nader doesn't have a shot in hell. If he did that, it would only hurt the Democratic nominee. But I'm more and more out of him about, I mean, he literally went from 2 weeks ago when he thought he might win. The Democrats, we're going to help them, we're going to support them, blah, blah, blah. Never raised a dime for them, never helped a single Democrat on a down ticket race. He's never campaigned for a Democrat. But all this shit, I'm going to help the whole party. Now that he's losing, 2 weeks later, Democratic Party's evil. The machine is conspiring against me. This the delegates. You got to stop Debbie Wasserman Schultz. It started this crazy conspiracy. We've said before that Bernie really is the liberal Ron Paul. It's becoming that way where his fans are now believing there's some vast conspiracy against him instead of just that he's not popular enough to win the whole thing.
Facebook, the Democratic Party page, and there is some guy on there just absolutely spamming the page talking about corruption and how Democrats are stealing the nomination away from Bernie. And I mean, just constant. That's all he puts on it. And I commented on one and I called him out on it. And he deleted the post that I commented on. But then he just kept going with the same nonsense. His fans are just...
In a way, I like Bernie's fans. That's why when he drops out of the race, it's going to probably be good for us. Because right now, like you had somebody on Facebook, you had somebody on Twitter, and you got to see, are they Bernie or Hillary? You got to go and look and say, are they feel the burn or are they Hill yes? Or I'm with her. And you got to look at that. And I think if the second he drops out, it ain't going to matter. We can be with all the liberals. And it's going to really help us as an entire party or as liberals really come together. And people saying, well, we got to unite blue. We all got to come together. I am increasingly seeing him as the lone obstacle to that happening because I kind of believe when he drops out, his people, they may bitch and scream, but I can't really see them campaigning against Hillary. They'll either be totally quiet.
I think once he's out, I think they'll go through their little pissed off phase. and then November rolls around and it's time to vote. They'll be right there in the polls punching a ballot for Hillary.
We can look back and say, well, all the Hillary people, they didn't hesitate to vote for Obama. But the difference was Hillary's a party player, and she endorsed Obama, and she went to the convention and she said, this is okay. And Bernie's not shown any indication that he's willing to do that. And I think that right now he's forced there to be new debates. The last debate was supposed to be in the middle of March. He's had 4 new ones. The last one's in the middle of May. I'm getting the sense he would debate her in the convention parking lot if he could. And I think she'll probably have enough delegates that it won't matter. And if that's the case, then they should cancel those last 2 debates in May. And if he won't do that, then it's kind of like, what are you? He's contesting Iowa, okay? So he didn't really formally concede Iowa. I think he's going to wait and see if Iowa makes any difference and then contest it if it really does. But he's kind of contesting Iowa. He's talking about the superdelegates. He's talking about the new rules of the lobbying contributions that have been put in place backdoor. He's spreading this idea that there's a conspiracy against him. He's talking that Hillary won't debate him. Well, she agreed to new debates. She had to. He hacked into her voter database. I gave Hillary $10 several months ago. Ever since then, I've gotten daily emails from Bernie, not Hillary. So it's like, he's got her information somehow. He's got all of her information. It's just getting kind of nasty. Right now, he's not showing any indication that if he loses, he'll be like, well, Hillary, you won fair and square. Nomination's yours. I'm going to support you. He's not showing any sign that he's that kind of person.
And the funny thing is, this is all coming from the guy who said that, you know, he's not going to run a negative campaign.
Yeah, it's becoming increasingly hollow that he said that, because what he does, he'll go on a debate and say, I don't have a super PAC, and not mention that nobody does. The campaigns can't coordinate. He'll go on a debate and say, basically, that he won't criticize Hillary about her emails, but when he goes to a town hall, he mentions it. But he'll go on a debate and say that he's not going to talk about Bill Clinton's sex life. When he gets interviewed, he mentions it. So it's kind of he's like, I'm not going to talk about what a dirty, horrible person Bill Clinton. Really, like, it's kind of in this way that he's running a clean campaign that's not clean. And his supporters hacked into her database. The only reason he's doing anything about the Bernie Bros, because there's the Bernie Bros, and they go around and they sexually harass, not really sexually harass, but they basically harass any female Hillary supporter, especially female, really go after them. And people say, well, he denounced them. I'm like, yeah, he denounced them like 3 months after they got started. Like, he denounced them like last week, and it was because he was losing support, because some of his supporters were so rude to some of the female senators that were at a luncheon or whatever, that he had to say something. But in the back of his mind, he's thinking, well, this is a political revolution. People should be revolutionary. And I mean, I think he's only saying something because it was blowback, and he was getting to lose some of the female support he had got because he didn't say anything for so long. John Lewis, the veteran congressman from Georgia, he supports Hillary, and the Congressional Black Caucus supports Hillary. And a lot of his supporters have gone crazy talking about John Lewis is a sellout, all this shit, Uncle Tom, all this crap. John Lewis is a real civil rights hero. Not like a bunch of white kids criticizing him for endorsing Hillary, basically. John Lewis is a real deal. And Bernie's so far, and as of this recording, and maybe it'll change by the time we post this, but he has said absolutely nothing to defend John Lewis or against these attacks on him. Nothing. He's kind of having it both ways. He riles people up into an angry mob with revolution talk and the machine. When you're encouraging people to see even Democrats as part of the system, they're bought and paid for. They're corporate. We had some fucking guy. He called us Wall Street lobbyists. I'm like, I wish we made that kind of money. I wish we made that kind. We're fucking broke. And they're talking about we're Wall Street lobbyists. Alabama, poorest goddamn state in America, never had any kind of decent paying job. Putting up 2 sites. Alabama Liberal, we just celebrated 5 years. I think you're on 4 years. So
I can't even buy my own domain name.
No, don't say that. A Bernie fan will swoop in and buy it. But anyway, I have my domain, assholes, so I don't even... We put up these sites for years for free. I have ads. They're decoration at this point. They're wallpaper. They might as well be the wallpaper because I don't get ad clicks. Every year I've been Liberal, I've lost money. And, I don't like Bernie. You're Wall Street! Wall Street! You know, and I'm like, is this the new communist? Like, on the Republican side,
it really is.
Everybody's an immigrant. You calling everybody who doesn't agree with you Wall Street. His fans have gotten so bad that it makes me, not like him. We write blogs, and I mean, we hope to build a media platform, but right now they're nonprofit sites. I mean, we don't make any money, and they're calling us corp, and we're just putting something up for the fun of it. People can read our jokes or whatever, and they can enjoy it for free. We don't charge any money. We don't make any money. And because we like Hillary, you're conspiring with Wall Street. In their minds, anybody who'd support Hillary is corporate. So we're corporate. Barack Obama's corporate. John Lewis is corporate. The Congressional Black Caucus is corporate. The women's advocacy groups is corporate. Planned Parenthood is corporate. Gay rights organizations are corporate. And this raises to really our big thing. Bernie's fans are almost 100% white. almost. I know there's some black ones. There's Cornel West. There's Killer Mike and Cornel West. But his demographics are extremely white. They're actually not poor. They went into his demographics. Barack Obama inspired a much poorer base in 2008 than Bernie is right now. Bernie's fans are young, affluent, white college kids and 20-year-olds and aging hipsters and professors. His fans are not hurting, and they're solely talking about Wall Street and this bullshit. And it's like, and you go to the Hillary side, she has a lot of black fans. She has a lot of rural fans. She has a lot of people in inner city Baltimore or rural Alabama, you know, some of the most poverty-stricken in America. There's a big divide because there's this debate about sexism. Gloria Steinem and Madeleine Albright, they're sexist for defending Hillary, but when the Bernie bros shit on every female Hillary supporter 4 months at a time, like nothing is said about that, basically. Bernie inspires a mob of young male fans, and they're not sexist. On Twitter, I can't even follow somebody who's got a picture of Deadpool as their profile pic, because I'm like, if there's like comic book characters or they're Bernie fans, and they're crazy. And they've got 20 followers. They're young men who've got like the 20 followers, and they just have nothing to do but pick troll fights all day. There's the gender divide, and there's the racial divide, because Hillary is getting a lot of black support. Like I said, Congressional Black Caucus, Barack Obama has all but endorsed her. And Bernie's young white male fans are writing pieces about how can black people possibly think about voting for Hillary. And once again, they're trying to dictate what a progressive is to people who have the most to gain from being progressive. That they're trying to tell them how it should go or how they should vote.
Right. I think a lot of this goes all the way back what I brought up before on a past podcast, and you just talked about it a little bit. Look at who Bernie supporters are. They're typically younger voters who don't follow politics closely. They really just don't understand politics. Now, do all of this not thinking about this could have some type of negative effect overall. I think they do it without thinking for the most part.
I mean, do you think there's something a little tone deaf about his fans hosted a conference? You probably saw this on Twitter and social media. Hosted a conference, how to talk to black women.
Yeah.
Not a single black woman in the room. Because Bernie's fans are so white, they had to host a conference of how to talk to black women about Bernie.
Right.
Like how to sell Bernie. Because it's like Bernie Sanders fans, they're like, why do black people like Hillary? And I'm like, maybe because you've talked to so few of them. You got to have a seminar on how to talk to black women, because that's how many you've talked to.
Yeah.
And I think his fans...
Which really sounds like something you'd hear out of the Republican Party.
Yeah, well, they wouldn't bother with a conference. They'd say, why do we want to talk to black women? Like, that would be their seminar. Like, why would we waste our time talking to them? But Bernie's fans, they talk shit about John Lewis. They have a conference about how to talk to black female fans. Bernie hosted a forum in Minnesota. It was a race forum where he talked to black people, universally panned. There wasn't cameras in the room, but the people who were there tweeted out that he basically went there and tried to lecture them how it was. And they kept being, we know the stats. Like, he come in and talk about how hard black lives are to a room full of black people. Yeah. And it was kind of like,
we got that.
Enough. Yeah, this isn't enough. And they said he showed up late, he left early, the forum got rowdy, he kept yelling, it was like a mess. When they asked him real questions, they could just tell he'd never thought about it. And he kept shifting it back to income inequality, income inequality, income inequality. He and Hillary have really differentiated themselves in recent weeks, where Bernie's saying, first you got to have the economic progress, then you'll have the racial equality. And Hillary is saying, no, you got to have racial equality first, then the economic equality, because if you don't, you'll never get the economic equality, because black people, they can't get in the job interview, they can't get the promotion, they can't get in the private school, they can't get in college, they can't get the scholarships. And what she's saying is exactly right. I mean, any upwardly mobile black person, they can have money, they can have a college degree, and then they go to a job, and it's a black woman, they go in a room, there's 10 white guys or whatever, they go in there, the woman who's interviewing them is a blonde white woman who thinks she gets it because they're both women, and they're locked out in almost every way. And I think that, like, that's what Bernie's not getting, and the solutions he's putting forward are not really going to change that. Bernie, he keeps targeting his economic movement towards FDR, and the problem with that is that in the 1930s, there was still segregation. Like, your policies, they didn't even try to break up the racial discrimination. They didn't even try to address that. They didn't even try to address racial inequalities, really. How can black and Hispanic people not relate to the FDR movement? I'm like, because they were left out of the first place.
Yeah, absolutely. Like you said, I mean, there was segregation going on, and you had a depression, a massive depression sweeping the country. You know, a lot of the policies that were put into place to help struggling white families get back to work and get back to earning a living, and it focused less on minorities. I mean, some minorities did benefit, but there was no real aggressive movement from the New Deal targeted specifically for minorities. So they really wouldn't, when you think back to the New Deal and FDR, they really wouldn't relate to that.
And FDR was a great president. I'm not trying to say that he wasn't. I mean, he was a great president. The New Deal was amazing. But you got to think about it. So they were getting the economic benefits from the New Deal. The South was still segregated.
Yeah.
After the New Deal was passed, it was still over 30 years before it was integrated. Between 30 to 40 years for whatever state you were in before it was even remotely integrated, before you could even vote. So that's how we know that economic progress alone makes no difference. Because they did have economic progress in the 1930s. They did have the New Deal, and they still couldn't vote in the South. And I just have to look at that and think, this is the argument Hillary's making, and I have to say it's been her most effective argument against him.
But then you look at some of Bernie's supporters, and they look at that argument, and they don't understand it. When you talk about changing their social status or, whatever, they're looking at that and saying, you're basically saying the same thing, so we're just going to support Bernie. You're saying the same thing, you're just putting it in a different order.
They're 30-year-olds, some are like 20 years old, like white kids. I think that they think because they grew up in a time where Roe v. Wade was decided and like the South was integrated, Roe v. Wade was decided and women had similar rights to that time. They weren't really around for these struggles. You meet millennials who don't spend any real time around minorities. So I think millennials are as segregated as their grandparents were, and people keep saying, well, all this racial barriers, they'll all go away when the millennials take over. And I'm like, well, I bet they said that in the 60s too. I bet the baby boomers were like, well, when we take over, there won't be any of this old, they've been saying that since they ended slavery. People that were in slavery were like, well, our grandkids, they'll grow up in a world where this doesn't matter. And then when they ended segregation, I mean, it's always been like this. And I think, I'm not saying it will always be like this, but I think that when you see young white kids, some of them girls, some of them boys, for Bernie, and they literally can't fathom how the Congressional Black Caucus would support Hillary. Like they don't get it. But Bernie met with Al Sharpton last week, and I'm like, Hillary and Bill have cultivated relationships in the black community for 25 years. Bernie Sanders met with Al Sharpton Monday. I mean, all the Congressional Black Caucusers, he talks, but we never saw him. He never came to these events. He's like, I have 100% from him to NAACP, and they said, but he never came to any of the events. He never sponsored any bills. They were all about income and all about money. Like he never really went out of his way to put his neck out there on these issues, because they would make the argument that that's because Vermont's 94% white and there's not really a lot of skin in the game. And that's an argument. But then don't act shocked when people support Hillary because she's actually been out there for 25 years advocating for this stuff. They'll point to some drug bills that Bill Clinton passed, which even Bill Clinton says are a mistake now. Bill Clinton said that those bills were a mistake. Would they talk about that? And I'm like, you're talking about less than a handful of bills and a lot of progress. I mean, Bill Clinton was hugely popular with the black community. He went on Arsenio Hall and played saxophone. This was all before they even knew Barack Obama existed. They felt like this is amazing. Like, what this man's doing is amazing. And so I think for them to throw that aside now and be shocked that black people wouldn't immediately line up behind Bernie, who introduced himself to them 5 minutes ago, I'd say naive at best, and at worst, it's a little bit like, how can they be so dumb? That's how it's coming off.
It's not surprising.
We'll talk a little bit about age. I mean, younger Democrats seem to be more Bernie, older Democrats are more Hillary, and I've seen a lot of really smug. Like, we're not old, we're young. We should technically be for Bernie. People go, oh, you're probably 50. Well, we're not. We're not really old. No, we don't work on Wall Street. Like, we defy all the Bernie stereotypes, but 25-year-olds are being like, these old people, that shows you what they know. And I'm like, well, maybe they've been around long enough to have seen Walter Mondale and George McGovern and Ralph Nader. I mean, a lot of these kids don't even fucking know who Ralph Nader is.
That's true.
They've Bernie. They've seen him. They've seen Dukakis. They've seen Ralph Nader. They've seen the liberal senators from New England and promising a revolution. I mean, 20 years ago, Ralph Nader was talking about taking the corporate money out of politics. This is not new. Like, it didn't get started overnight. And the only person who's going to be able to end it is probably somebody who's in the system, not outside of it. And older people are with Hillary, and the young Bernie fans, they're kind of getting off on that, talking about how old Hillary's fans are. I mean, what do you think is poor knowledge of history, probably?
I do. I think that's partly it. I think it's the poor knowledge of anything, really. Generation that we're talking about. I mean, they're not interested in politics. They're enamored with social media. They get their news from 7-second vines and funny meme about a politician, and they don't bother going in depth and researching it. And then you hear Bernie Sanders coming out talking about issues that they think sound really good, and they're like, oh, well, we can get behind him. And then you hear Hillary coming out with very nuanced, in-depth answers, and they're like, well, whatever. So
Hillary comes and says, I'm not going to promise you the moon. We want the moon. Shut up.
Yeah.
So when Gloria Steinem, when she was kind of being critical of young women supporting Bernie or whatever, talking about they don't know what a huge moment this is, they're just doing it for the boys. A lot of young women were like, oh, Gloria Steinem is so stupid or whatever, and then half of them were like, who's Gloria Steinem? They barely even knew who they were attacking, who they were talking about was stupid. I'm like, well, think of Katniss Everdeen, but real, because Gloria Steinem, like, actually kicked ass, actually did something, actually went out there, actually was a huge pioneer for women's rights. People keep saying, well, it's progress that people don't think of Hillary as a woman. I don't know that it is. This is a huge moment, and they go, it's progress that young girls, they're so advanced that they don't even see this as a big deal, and they don't even find Hillary inspiring. And I'm like, I don't know that I find it almost naive, because the last person who had even a remotely good chance of becoming president was Geraldine Ferrero, the last woman. She was Walter Mondale's running mate back in 1984. 32 years later, we haven't had a woman president. A lot of women back then backed Reagan over Mondale and Geraldine Ferrero. They go, well, it'd be nice to have a woman president, but she's not the right one. Well, it's 32 years later. Who is the right one? I mean, we keep hearing this over and over again. Hillary's not right. Sterling's not right. Well, that last one I might agree with. If you're a Republican, I get where maybe you don't like Hillary, but that's not even who we're talking about. We're talking about liberals who say Hillary's not liberal enough. And I'm like, this is Geraldine Ferrero all over again. This is 32 years later. We haven't had a woman president. One of the only major countries in the world that hasn't, by the way. Bernie, he goes on and on. We're the last major country that hasn't had health care. We're also one of the last ones that had a woman president. You know, I mentioned that one. What do you think it is that young women, they just don't identify with Hillary, or they don't think a female president's important, and they're not identifying this as a gendered thing? This is the same group that people don't like, because on college campuses they're talking about microaggression. Like, this is the same, like, this is the same group that overreacts to a rape scene in Game of Thrones, or they write blog pieces about some guy who looked at them the wrong way in class. These are like the most supposedly feminist people on the planet. These are girls on college campuses, and they're for Bernie. I mean, like, what sense does that make?
It doesn't. And it's so funny because in the debates, I've been asked, I know, twice during debate, why are young girls voting for you? And it's like, she just like, you know, she doesn't have an answer for it. So, I mean, obviously I'm not going to have an answer.
But she can't even answer it honestly, because if she answered it honestly, it'd be used against her. So she just has to say, they don't have to be for me, I'm going to be for them. And in the back of her mind, she's like, I'm so glad this is what all the feminist movement that I was a part of back in the 60s, this is what it came to, is that young girls now who complain about a cashier at Kmart giving them the stink eye and write a blog about microaggressions and how they don't know how hard it is to be a young white girl in a college campus. I'm so glad that now they can support Bernie. I mean, it come full circle into this point of these movements that are supporting Bernie. These are the movements that alienated people to the Republican side in the first place. They're so politically correct. I mean, we don't agree with a lot of what they say. They're so politically correct. They're so sensitive. They talk about microaggressions. Every time Ben Carson or Trump mentions political correctness, this is what gets the roars from the audience. These are the same people driving the country to Trump because they're so afraid of, like, I can't wear a Halloween costume, or I can't send a funny email, or I'm going to get in trouble if I say something wrong. People are so afraid that they're going to say the wrong thing that it's almost driving them to the Republican side. And these are the people Hillary can't reach. They don't identify her as a woman, and they don't think this kind of progress is important. And I just find this disconnect staggering. This is more drop calls than sprint. You know, like these connections are just not hooking up for me.
Me either. Or Hillary.
Yeah. You know, after that debate, her whole campaign staff went in the competition. They go, you know, it's a damn good question. What, like, I mean, they probably had a huge like whiteboard, like, what the hell is wrong with women under 30? And they just had their big question marks.
She walked off the debate stage and she's like, until I get an answer for this, you're all fired.
We've seen now that I think not just the divisions sexually and age-wise and also racially, because keep in mind, I forgot to mention this about John Lewis. He went to the Occupy Wall Street rallies in Atlanta. He went to Occupy Wall Street rally in Atlanta to speak. He wanted to speak and wanted to say he was with them, and they voted not to let him speak at that rally. So Occupy Wall Street, they started out with the great message, 99%. They got increasingly further and further and further wider, more college age. It kind of became a movement for people who didn't have anywhere else to go. And not because they were broke or homeless. They were just lost, like emotionally, intellectually. And some of them were probably homeless. And when you have a bunch of white kids at an Occupy rally in Atlanta and they were refusing to let John Lewis, a civil rights congressman, speak, is this showing the division between angry young white progressives and people that they now view as the system?
Yeah, I think it is.
I mean, Obama, they asked Bernie at the debate, they said, do you think you'd be better for black people than Barack Obama? And he said, absolutely. He didn't even hesitate. Yeah. And the moderator who asked it was a black woman, and she had to keep her eyes nailed to the podium, not for them not to roll in the back of her head. But my eyes start rolling, they'll never stop. But I thought, right, the first democratically elected minority in the history of the world, because there's never been a black president in Australia, Canada, Europe. So it's like the first democratically elected black minority in the history of the world. You, a senator from Vermont, that's 94% white, a 75-year-old old white guy. He's from Brooklyn. And you know when he left Brooklyn, when it started turning black, he moved to Vermont. He's from Brooklyn. He lived in Brooklyn throughout the 1950s. When Brooklyn turned black, he moves like, let's go to Vermont. I'm like, you a senator from Vermont, are going to do better for black rights than the first democratically elected president. It's that kind of thinking. And I think that's the same kind of thinking that like you see at Bernie's rallies or you see at the boycotts of John Lewis and the Occupy when they won't let John Lewis speak and the Minnesota Forum and when white kids write long articles about why black people shouldn't vote for Hillary. They're now viewing older black people who have achieved any type of progress, like John Lewis and Obama and the Congressional Black Caucus, like the black power structure itself, they're more progressive than them. And you just have to look at that and think, are you fucking crazy? This is crazy. Your sense of, like, your place in the progressive movement is vastly inflated. And maybe that's why Bernie's attracting them, because they're the same in that way.
You may have found it.
Yeah. We'll wrap it up with this, but like, there's now been talk that a lot of Karl Rove and his like underground network, they're supporting Bernie. They're giving him money. Not him directly, and he probably don't know about it, but they're making some of these contributions, and they've started Super PAC's name, and they're actively talking about a strategy Karl Rove's had to divide, basically to turn the far left into the weapon of the Republicans against the more electable Democrats. And it'll basically be like a two-party type strategy, but for the left wing, but it won't be coming from the left wing. It'll mostly be propped up and encouraged by the Republicans. At least the Tea Party was it was funded by billionaires, but they were genuinely right-wing, crazy billionaires. George Soros didn't think up the Tea Party. The Tea Party was created out of the ether from the wishes of a few billionaires. The far-left movement that's now getting started and people saying we need a liberal Tea Party or whatever, this is a lot more sinister because it feels like a lot of the influence is not being shaped by a few left-wing billionaires that are frustrated that Congress is so slow. It's being shaped by Karl Rove's network and people like that.
Right.
So you think that the potential is there to divide progressives so much that far left progressives, they may now be the unwitting pawns of the right wing?
I think the possibility is there. Do I think that it's going to happen this time? I'd say no. Typically, you look at Democrats as we've got so many divisions within the Democratic Party that, you've got ultra liberals, you have the environmentalists, you got, just so many different little niches in the Democratic Party, but they have a tendency to, when it comes time to vote, uniting some way, somehow. I think the possibility is there. Maybe the possibility has been there all along. They just needed a voice, and maybe Bernie's giving that voice. So, I don't know. I think it is possible. I don't think it's likely at this time, but I could see it.
They printed out a strategy, and the strategy was they didn't want to run against Hillary, and even back, this was cooked up like almost immediately after the 2012 elections. Hillary was the one they were afraid of.
Yeah.
This was the one they did not want to run against. Their strategy was basically to take a challenger from the far left wing, first to use he or she to push Hillary to the far left so it would make it harder for her to win the general. Like basically she'd have to go to that person's left, and it would be like all that would be used against her in the general campaign and make it look like she was a communist or whatever. Or the person could be used to siphon away enough progressive support and progressive votes that it cost her the election. And this was in a written plan. They didn't have Bernie's name on it. I'm looking at this and I'm like, this is exactly what's happening. And so it's pretty clever plan in that way, in a way that Karl Rove is clever. He's evil. He's an evil genius. He's constantly thinking of ways to disenfranchise the vote. And instead of what we've now seen, where a lot of courts are, again, this is something that economic progress for black people is not going to help when you've got a lot of courts in the Southeast actively trying to overturn the Civil Rights Act. mean, they're actively trying to make it harder for black people to vote. And economic progress alone ain't going to help that. But I think what he's thinking is like, well, I'll just settle for the red states. We'll do it in the purple states. And if he can get enough progressives to basically forget about voter ID laws, if they just feel disenfranchised enough not to vote at all, well, what better way than that? I think it's a little shameful that in a democratic society, Republican strategy is all around how to get the fewest number of people to the polls and how to get the least number of votes cast.
Right.
That's a topic for another
definitely.
podcast. We'll definitely be getting into that closer we get to the general. But for now, Mike, you want to posit any predictions for Saturday's races?
I think Hillary wins on the Democratic side. In Nevada, I think she pulls out a victory. For South Carolina, I think, God, I hate to say it, I think Trump struggles. I think he comes out on top.
Right after they vote in South Carolina, a few days after that, they do Nevada. Trump should win that. I mean, he does own casinos. He employs some of the state, so I would think he would.
Yeah.
He's a casino magnate, and it's Nevada, so I would think he would win. Anyway, keep listening, and we'll keep you posted. And the next time, we're getting closer to Alabama's primary, so we're going to be talking more about Super Tuesday. Michael, what's your web address?
blueinalabama.wordpress.com.
And, of course, you can find me at Alabama Liberal. Okay, thanks for listening, everybody.